How early do you start to put train on these plants?
A good question. Yeah, we have found that, and this is assuming that your first few steps went well. So let's say you planted your seed, it germinated within a couple of days, and then grew in the cup for 3 weeks, and then you transplanted at week 3 when the plant's about this big, maybe 3 to 4 nodes, and then a week later, when what we usually do is stop it after the 5th node. So then there's 5 nodes left. Remove that first node that never really grows to be much. So you're left with 4 nodes on the plant, 8 branches in total. That topping is done around week 4. We only start training at about 1 to 2 weeks after that, depending on how big those small growth sites are going to be. So when those little growth sites right after you top, which are the smallest ones, once they're about, I'd say 2 inches big, that's when you can start putting your clips for the first time on them. And that's the nice thing about training them that early, is that you get the manifold shape right away, and before they form, because those branches, they thicken up so quickly and they get so rigid so quickly, like quicker than all of the others. So if you get that main line, then what we do is sometimes we put clips on those ones below as well. So first node, second node from the top. Now you have to just be careful with the bottom ones, because sometimes the bottom ones, they're super tall. They already caught up. So you can potentially train them a little bit as well. And sometimes because you've already transplanted, instead of using the clips, you can use the pots for those smaller branches. They put less pressure and so on. And then the clips on those top ones. However, we never train the bottom branches if they're struggling to make their way to the top, or if they're just making their way. In fact, when they're just making their way to the top, we almost pull them toward the center so that they can grow into colas later on, or of those 4 nodes, 8 branches that you left behind. If there are any dwarf ones, when you grow a big branch and a little dwarf right beside it on the same node. So we always remove the little dwarf so that the bigger one grows better. There was a plant that I did recently, had to remove 4 branches out of the 4. You know what I mean? So it grew like one here, one there, like skip one on the other node, skip one on the other node, because they just didn't catch up. Like the plant decides to put energy towards some branches and not necessarily toward others, right? So start of training week 5 to 6, and then we recommend stopping training when you begin flowering, unless you're doing something like scrogging, for example, which is a very light touch type of training. And with the clips as well, if you continue training too much into flower and you don't have a scrog net to support it, you don't have a trellis net, then what happens, and I've done this before, is you overtrain it. And what happens is your plants start putting on weight after that point, and they get so heavy that they flop over, and your buds now, they start facing down. It's so weird. So if you train too much into flower, the plant now doesn't have that strength, that arm to support all of that weight. So if you're going to do that, continue training to flower, we really recommend that support. And sometimes what we do too, when we have, say, a plant with those big colas, if you don't have a trellis net, the opposite branches, sometimes they can support each other. So if the opposite branches, they start collapsing because it's getting too heavy, you can tie one to the other with a piece of garden tie. And then you tie them opposite to one another through the plant, and you end up preventing them from falling over like that. Because that peyote Skittles, for example, it grew into, say, 8 colas, but those 8 got very heavy too. The moment you move the plant went this way, you know what I mean? And then that way, so you had to be careful with how to manipulate it, right? So we always like to add a trellis net if you have the ability to. Trellis nets are great. They help train down when you need it, and they help to train up when you need it. You know what I mean? They help support it at the same time.
This FTS clip was brought to you by AC Infinity, leaders in garden innovation. Use discount code TheStash15 at checkout to save some money on your order.
From the Stash Podcast.